spontaneously that just got all the fans together in a very cool way. So please, Johanna, the stage is yours. Very welcome up on stage. Please have a seat.
Thank you.
The next gentleman, he has two hats. One hat is that he's part of MEC, advising brands to connect through medias with all of us. But he's also somebody who knows a lot about and has researched a lot about youth and what youth cares about. He also writes books and is a generally fantastic guy. So please, Johnny, come up on stage. Please have a seat. I'm going to sit in the egg.
Thank you.
Welcome up on stage. I'll sit over here in the egg. So we've been spending almost 2 full days with painting a digital sort of the box of the puzzle. So we're painting the box of the jigsaw, trying to understand. We're 50 billion connected devices, all these companies, authenticity, quest for talent. What do you think will be if we go 10 years ahead of time? What will people care about, the citizen of that environment that we're building, the young people now or the young people then, if we start with the young?
Well, I think the young people will care about the same things that young people always had cared about: content and engaging conversation and friends and being in a group of people that really likes you. I think the biggest change is where you do it and how you do it. And I think that we have 50 million connected devices, but we can't stare us blind to the devices. We have to fill it. It's content, it's people. It's always people. We're not going to transform into devices. Devices are just, merging our needs.
But are kids the same always, and we just think they're different because we're not kids anymore? or is there a different type of kid right now, taught by the internet and sort of?
If you see to kind of basic needs, the kids are the same as we were when we were kids. The thing is that you can explore your needs and you can do it on a different way now. You have Facebook and Instagram, and you have the smartphone, and you have everything that we didn't have. But if we had it, we would have used it. And I think what we have to understand is, like you said, we are the elderly. We are not the digital natives, and we have to understand that. We have to be humble to the young people today, because they understand things that we don't understand, but we can understand their needs because we have them as well. When we was young, I wanted to talk to my friends, and the most advanced thing that I had was the 3-part call. You could talk with 2 friends at the same time. That was fantastic. Yeah.
So 10 years ahead of time, or at least ahead in time, what do you think some of the major changes are?
Well, I'm going to be a bit of a party poop and say it's not quite as simple as I think it's come across the past 2 days. So what we need to do, I think, as companies is to look ahead at the information that is actually out there, not just about what's happening in our own fields, but what's happening in society in general, right? And let's assume that the Eurozone doesn't crash. And let's assume that the world economy is going to be shitter. I mean, everybody says it's going to get worse before it gets better. Let's assume it's going to take like 5 years, and then we're back on track. Let's look ahead and see what happens then. Let's also assume that nuclear terrorism isn't going to happen. It's a huge threat, but let's just say that's not going to happen because that's sort of off-the-radar events. What threats are we looking at in the next 10 to 20 years? Globally speaking. And I think in Europe, when we say globally, we often mean outside Europe. And what I'd like to remind you of first is globally includes every country, including this one, right? So, resource scarcity would be one of the big ones. The global food production today is running basically on 3 elements: oil, phosphorus, which we use for fertilizer, and water, which we need for drinking, but also for our crops. And we're running out of all of these 3 things. I'm not going to say peak oil is going to happen, peak phosphorus is going to happen, but the prices will definitely go up because there is less of these resources available. We're going to be seeing water wars probably in all of our lifetimes. They're already existing in the world, so this isn't very difficult. It's a no-brainer. It's already happening. Extreme weather is definitely going to happen. We already know. I know everybody hates climate change. Like, oh, she's going to talk about climate change. I'm really sorry, but this isn't something that's going to happen 100 years from now. The 2-degree temperature rise has already happened. That's the unavoidable consequence of stuff that's already happened, right? It's probably going to be more. All the scientists now say it's probably going to be more. And once we get to like 3 or 4 degrees over the next few 100 years or so, we don't even know what the consequences of that are. Like, we don't know how many people can live on this planet. So on one side, we have this huge opportunity of the growing middle classes in the global south. It's amazing. It's really good for all of our industries. At the same time, we have probably 1 billion people, at least, whose situation is going to be significantly worse, and a lot of people will start dying. And there are so many more of these challenges. I'm just going to lift one more, which is the problem we have with antibiotics not working as well as they used to. So we've had this breather of almost 100 years in the global north, for sure, where we haven't really died of trivial illnesses like the flu and syphilis. And that might change. Like, we might start...
But you're describing a very fearful society. Do you think that fear will be like one of the components that guides the citizens of that era?
You see where I'm heading with this. So even though...
It's the apocalypse.
So basically the central... Let's think about this for a while. So all of this is happening, and most of the people who are going to start dying aren't going to be the people in this room, statistically speaking, except for some extreme weather things and stuff like that. Most of us aren't going to be hit, probably. But we're going to be living in an information society where the narratives, the dominant narratives, are narratives about fear. And that, I think, is going to change very much, because somehow when we look into the future, and when these kids, for sure, today look at their lives, they imagine they're going to be running web agencies and playing computer games. And that's probably also true, but it's not the full story. They're going to be terrified. And this is where you guys should be paying attention, because fear is bad for business. Fear stifles innovation, fear stifles investment, fear makes consumers not want to buy stuff except for maybe like guns and tinned food.
I'm taking that back to Johnny. We're getting sort of hit with a fairly negative but yet insightful potential view of society. How do you look upon it? Is it getting worse or better?
Well, when you listen to Johanna here, well, we're facing that somewhere along the road. It's coming, but as you said, probably people in this room won't start dying when this hit us, and I wonder, will people listen to all of this? When you have this transparency, do you really want to listen when you're going to hell, if you are afraid? Does fear make you want to listen just because you can, or will fear make you shut down just because you can?
I think there are two likely outcomes, and both will probably happen, right? So one side of it is alienation and isolating yourself from these realities. And I mean, I'm a huge gamer. I love all of that stuff. But we are also we've made it very easy for ourselves to turn off the real world if we want to. So that's absolutely going to grow. And of course, always in crisis, the entertainment industry is boom. So good on you, everybody who's in the gaming industry. But I think another side of it is that people will also, a lot of people will also want to engage. And I think especially young people, which is ironic, right? Because young people don't understand about consequences, basically. You don't even have that part of your brain until you're like 25. But on the other hand, they have a lot of idealism because they don't really understand how everything works. So a lot of people will probably want to engage with these issues and find meaningful things to do. And in some weird way, like, I find this inspirational. So, because we've been living in a time, all of us, all of this wealth that we are currently enjoying, and all of this culture that all of us represent, comes from a period of peace and abundance. But what we've been kind of lacking is purpose, unless you count as purpose starting a really cool startup and, you know, cashing out 5 years later.
That could be. And I think there could be a lot of different routes to purpose, but you have to find that yourself. Before, and still in many countries, religion gave you purpose in life. We were in Kumbaya, my Lord, but it was okay because it was something better afterwards. And then you take away religion, even though we're safer and wealthier and healthier, depression is just going up dramatically. So I'm sort of debating with myself whether I think society going forward will be a nicer place with more happy people, or just a place with more depressed people.
Yeah, but like, if, the weird thing is purpose makes us happy. And I don't know, like, I'm going to have to ask you, but aren't young people looking for like tribes and connections?
Yeah, they do. They want to be in a group with friends and people who think alike. But I think when you're describing the world going to hell, how will that affect the networking society? Because the parts of the world that then will go to hell, will they be connected? Will they be online? If you have a hurricane that sweeps away 400 people and 400,000 people maybe.
Yeah.
So will we hit 50 million connected devices if we are going to apocalypse?
I think this apocalypse will be televised.
Yeah, okay.
Or it'll be
on CNN or
no,
BBC.
it'll be on Bambooser at least,
yeah, okay.
because these devices are there. Of course, then the problem is that all of these networks, all of this infrastructure is really, really, it's not resilient, right? So even in the Nordic countries, every year, every second year or something, like last Christmas, except everybody seems to have forgotten, in Sweden and Finland, we had a storm. Like, we just had a lot of snow. And in Finland, for sure, in southern Finland, in the civilized parts of the country, there were people who were without electricity for 10 days. In Finland, the tech capital of, the world, as far as we're concerned. I know the Swedes have other ideas about it. That means, if you don't have electricity in Finland in the winter, you probably don't have heat. Your freezer's gonna melt, you can't use your oven, and you can't use your phone, because you can't, if you get ill, you can't call for an ambulance because everybody's mobile phones are out of power by day like 3, probably, even if you're being very careful with this. And the internet's not working. So, ironically, we think that we are safe as well, and we're not.
But I'll take us back from right or wrong. I'll take us back from sort of the potential negative situation. And if you look at the world going concern, it's going to be there, it's not going to be blown up, it's not going to be too warm or too cold. We're going to be here, but we're going to be 10 years ahead of time. And we're going to be here at SIME, and some people are going to tell how they connect with the citizens of that time. The elderly citizens, how are we going to be when we are elderly? Are we going to be super techie demanding? Are we going to want to have nightclubs that we go to because, we like the same music as everybody else? Or what's going to happen with that? Because before, when you were 30s, I saw some statistics, you never changed music taste or clothing taste. So that means that all sort of senior citizens froze at 30, and then they had the same like checkered little hat and so forth.
Demographically speaking, we're not going to stop working, at least. That's impossible here. And I don't know, like, I look at young people, but of course already I'm 34, and I'm like, they don't even want to work. Like, we've raised them wrong. I'm sorry, we have not prepared them for the world that is coming. We've prepared them for the fantasy that we're all living. And I wonder about you guys who are like who have startups. Like, do you think your kids will be entrepreneurs? And did you have kids in your 30s and 40s? Like, aren't you just going to give them a pile of money when you die, and then they're not going to do anything? Because, I'm seriously, I don't have kids yet, so I'm a little worried about this. Like, what are we doing? We should probably be like Sarah Connor, in the Terminator movies. We should be like preparing the kids for the apocalypse, but that's not what we're doing. We're saying, you're my precious snowflake. You can do whatever you want in the world. Probably not. Like, we don't know what's going to happen, but that's probably not going to be the reality. I don't know. I'm turning to you. You're the authority of the youth.
You got apocalyptic on us now again.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not apologizing.
No, apocalyptic.
Yeah, no.
No, but I want to find out sort of what do we do different now than now?
Than now?
Yeah. So if I'm 18, 10 years from now, how are things different? Will I work remotely with an Indian company? Will I don't get a job at all, or will I sort of hang out with my grandparents every day because we're connected, or is it once a year? Or how does this sort of are we going to raise our children differently because we're going to be in connection with them all the time because of we already are right now? I mean, the amount of messages between parents and children is transforming us back to the village where you actually met the kid a couple of days every day. So some thoughts around sort of the changes in the society.
You are going to run SIME, right, in 10 years, so you will be sitting here. And we are sitting here as well. Now, I think what we will do differently is about the technology and the digital, of course. But I don't know how how much will we adapt? I think it will be more interesting to look at the 13-year-old in 10 years. What will they do? We know that today 50% of the 3-year-olds in Sweden are online. So 10 years from now, they are 13. What will their demands be on the authority, the company, their work? You know, it's going to be different. And I think that's the interesting thing. If you look at from a marketing perspective or a brand perspective, you have to start think at this now, because the change is going to happen very, very fast. And it's going to be technical, social driven. So I don't think that the most interesting question is what we're doing in 10 years. It's what the 3-year-olds are doing in 10 years.
I think you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And I think that one of the things that I've missed in the conversation here, apart from a sort of global outlook in general, is that time perspective. Will your company even exist 10 years from now? Because there are startups that are built to be legacy companies. Google has a 100-year vision and so on. But most companies today aren't. And it has to do a little bit with that entrepreneurial culture as well, which is about creating and selling. And those individuals who are great at creating those companies, that's what they should be doing. But maybe somebody needs to be running companies. Like maybe we need to be thinking about what kind of companies are resilient, not just sustainable, but also resilient against things like economic downturns, which are inevitable anyway, and other kinds of challenges. And something really interesting was said on this stage today about the value gap between generations. And because I think that when that 13-year-old goes out into the workforce, as the world is starting to go to hell around her, as it inevitably will, she's going to start looking at these companies and not just say, are your values similar to mine? They're also going to say, is your company part of the problem here, globally speaking, or is your company part of the solution? Because it's not worth my while to be contributing to the problem. Like a lot of people will be selfish, we all are, but at least, you know, we don't want to be we don't want to be the bad guys. So I think, and to be believable, to be plausible, when you stand up and say, my company is part of the solution, we've seen this coming. And God knows, right now, the commercial sector is ahead of the game when it comes to the environment compared to the politicians. This is where the power is, right? Yeah. Like you guys are thinking about these things, and our politicians don't have the mandate to do that just yet. I think to be plausible, you have to start now to say, well, we've had the long-term plan because this company wants to be around 10 years from now, 20 years from now.
We talked about, actually, this morning on the HR seminar that the CSR, should be named corporate social opportunity instead, because it's an opportunity to do something different for your employees and for the world in general. And when you talk about how long companies will live, I think it's going to be shorter and shorter for some companies because the world is different. Now we're living in and raising our kids in an on-demand society, an always-on society. And if the company can't stand with that pace, they're going to fall.
But that raises the question about what is security in a place. Like, because if we say that the generation is going to be dominated by fear, I think that's inevitable. But what are the narratives that people would have instead? So the opposite of fear is hope. And the opposite of fear is also trust, I guess. And I think maybe possibly the opposite of fear is also innovation. So it's somewhere there with trust, hope, and innovation that the answers are going to lie. And those are the kinds of narratives that people want to engage with. I think, like, in England, where I was educated, they refer to the World War generations, I think specifically First World War generation, as the greatest generation. And it's beautiful, and I have a lot of sympathy for that idea. And of course, the generation that lived through the First World War and then also stopped fascism, you know, awesome. And I'm very grateful. But the challenges that we as a generation face are even tougher. And this time, all of humanity is basically on the same side. We just haven't noticed it yet, but we are. And isn't it like, if you want to be epic, isn't that the most epic journey? Like, isn't that the most epic challenge to be allowed to be part of? And it would be naive to think that there are not business opportunities in connecting the will to be part of the solution in different ways to the commercial market. You know?
I mean, this discussion could go on for many bottles of red wine and many evenings. And thank you for bringing in different perspectives. Thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you very much.